Hello everyone, I'm back with another Leetcode series problem. This is the, I think, third or fourth problem, I don't remember, but this is the third part in Leetcode series questions. And today we are going to solve another problem based on arrays using JavaScript. And the problem for today is merge sorted arrays. So I'm going to share the link of this problem in the description. So here the problem statement is given two sorted arrays, which is, let's say, num1 and num2. We need to merge the second array, which is nums2, into num1 as one sorted array. I did not get anything of this, but let's proceed. Then the second statement is the number of elements initialized in num1 and num2 are m and n. Okay, so the size of, or the elements which are present in num1 and num2 are somewhere m and n. And we must assume that num1 has a equal size of m plus n. Okay, and it has enough space to hold elements from num. Okay. Now this space kind of thing happens in languages like, I think, Java, where you have to allocate some space into an array before you can push elements. In case of JavaScript, we are not concerned with space, but since this problem is supposed to be solved by different languages, I think they have added the space into the first array like this. In case of JavaScript, even if there were no zeros, we would have still solved the problem. In some other languages, I think there would be an issue. Now let's take the example and try to understand the problem in detail, because the first time whenever I come across all these statements, it doesn't make much sense, but with examples, it makes a lot of sense what we are trying to do. Now in this case, we have a nums1 array in which we have three elements already populated, 1, 2, 3. Then we have 0, 0, 0 elements added, which are, I think, placeholders for the elements which are to be added from the second array. Then the m for nums1 is 3. So this is the total number of elements which are actually present, or which really matter in case of num1s. So in this case, m is 3. So the first three elements matter in case of num1, and the rest three elements do not matter at all. Then in case of num2, again we have three elements, 2, 5, 6, which we are supposed to add in place of this triple zeros, and the size, or the n variable for nums2 is 3, which are the actual elements in num3. Now the output, if you have a look, is kind of in a sorted fashion. That is, these elements were added into num1, but they were added in such a manner that the resultant array is sorted. And that's it from the first example. In case of second example, we have nums1 containing a single element with m as 1, and nums2 is empty. That is why n value is 0 for size of nums2, and the output is just 1, because there was no element addition and nums1 remained as it is. And for this, we need to have a strategy. So let me just reset my code, and we have some constraint as well. So the first constraint is nums1 dot length is equal to m plus n. Okay, nums2 dot length is equal to n. That was clear from the problem. Then m is always or greater than or equal to 0, so it can be 0. N is less than or equal to 200. I don't know. I think the constraints would be more suitable when we are actually trying to come up with an approach, and if there are some issues. Then m plus m are in between values of 200. That means both the arrays will have elements up to 100. Then nums1 of I and nums2 of I can be any value from minus 10 raised to 9 and 10 raised to 9. Okay, fine. So with that in note, we can now start solving the problem. Now, before we come to the actual problem solving, let's design a strategy of how we can solve this problem, or what kind of logic we can make use of to solve this problem. Now, in case of our question examples, we had num1 like this, which is 1, 2, 3, with three dummy elements or elements which need to be repressed. M was equal to 3. M plus n, that is the size of m, actual elements in num1 and actual elements in num2, is equal to 6, which is the total length of this array. And we have nums2 here. Let me just remove this for some time. I'm going to talk about it soon. And we have num2 here, which is, let's say, 3 elements with n as 3. And the expected result is to have a sorted elements in this fashion. Now, there are two approaches in which we can solve the problem. First is, we can take one element from here, like we can take 2, and we can add it into this array. But instead of adding it at the place 0, what we can do is we can sort the array and choose the right place for this 2. So this 2 can come somewhere in between this 2 and 3, and then we can shift all those elements to the right. That is one approach. Then we can take 5, and we can decide that, yeah, 5 can come after 3, so it will be added somewhere after 3, and then we can again shift the element towards the right and remove another 0. then 6 would get added, and the last 0 would get added. That is one approach. The second approach which I am going to use today is that I am going to take all these three elements and push them directly in place of these three zeros. That is, my array after my first operations will be something like, let me just add the text box. Okay. So in my case, what I'm going to do is, in case of nums1, I'm going to create an intermediate array in which all these three values will be there as it is, and I'm going to push this rest of these three elements in place of zeros. Like this, I'm going to replace zeros with these elements, and then I'm going to run a sort function on this entire array. Now, I don't honestly know which would be more efficient solution, but this is the solution which I find a little bit easier. That is why I'm going to follow this approach. Like, first we create a new array based on by combining these two arrays, and then we sort all the elements within that array. Now, one thing that we need to take a note of is, how do I insert these three elements into this new array? For that, obviously, I need some index at which I can start the insertion, right? I am calling that index as start index. Now, what will be the value of start index? If we observe carefully in this case, if the array indexes start from 0, like if this is 0th element, this is 1 element, this is 2 element, and this is 3. So my start index should start at a value of 3, right? And if you look at here, the n value is 3. So I can make an educated guess that if my start element is 3, I can go for start index as either the size of nums2, or I can go for something like start index is equal to num1 dot length, which is my nums1 dot length minus n, which is this actual elements in the array. So I can go with either of these approaches. I am thinking of going with this approach because by this I am pretty sure that the start index would be at 3. Now the problem that will happen if I take the start index directly as, let's say, 3 or 4 is, let's say if there are 4 elements and if I take the start index as 3, which is n, then in that case my insertion will start at the place of 4 and 4 will get replaced. That is why what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract the number of elements from my nums1.length, and I'm going to take that value. Now you can make a guess that okay, we have m value as well, so we can take m as the value directly, but in some cases it might fail because m is the actual elements which are present in the array and not the entire length of the array. We are going to understand that as well, but for now my approach is going to be, I'm going to initialize the start index like this. Let me just, and we are going to start inserting these elements one by one into nums1 using a for loop. So let's start off with that approach first. So I'm going to rename this var to const because I don't like vars use right now. Const and let are much better to use. Then I'm going to write a let variable to define my start index because start index is going to update, I think. Or okay, let's just go with const. If it is going to be redefined, I can change it later. This will be nums1 dot length minus the actual elements which are present in the second array. That is the first element length minus the actual elements in the second array, which is n. Then we can go for a for loop, right? Now where should this for loop start? Like I have to start this at somewhere, right? For my case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this for loop at the start index itself. That is, if the start index is 3, then I will start at the value 3, and eventually I am going to pick up this element using my I and place it here, then increment my value and so on and so forth. So let I start from my start index. Then what should be the upper bound for my I length? Obviously, if I am adding the elements here, my I length or the I index should run till the length of my nums1, right? So in this case, nums1 dot length would work fine. So nums1 dot length would be the end gap or the end constraint for my I, and I'm going to increment my I variable. And we need to define this using let. Then we are going to replace elements one by one, right? So nums1 can obviously have a value of I, which is 3, in which we need to add the value. So nums1 of I, this is where the value is supposed to be added, and the value is to be taken from the nums1 array. Now how do I make sure that this when I value is 3 here, this value is 0. If you make an educated guess or a careful guess, we realize that if I go for I, which is let's say 3 minus n at a particular time, then I will get the index. Similar, like let's say when I value is 3, then 3 minus 3 will be 0, and this first element 2 will get selected from nums 2, and I will be able to add it to nums 1. Then when i's value is incremented by 1 and it is 4, then 4 minus 3 would be 1, then 5 minus 3 will be 2, and then nums 2's last element will get picked. So we can go for a value like nums 1 of, sorry, nums 2 of the element which is I minus nth value. Now let's just log this value first and try to see if this is working fine before we proceed ahead. Like if I'm getting this array like 1 2 3 and 2 5 6, then we are done with our first step of our job. So let's check that using by printing nums1, and I think we can go for run code here. I think we have made some mistake. Let's just check the code. Console.log nums1. I think I shouldn't have a nums1.length is equal to. Other than that, no syntax error. Let's just try to run the code again and check. Okay. Now, as we can see, the input array was 1 2 3 and 2 5 6, and I have the net value which is 1 2 3 2 5 6. Now, obviously, these elements are not sorted. So let's sort out those elements next. So we can go for nums1.sort function again. And if you remember from our last video, in case of numeric values, we need to define a custom function in sort method in JavaScript. So let me just open the sort method here. Sort in JavaScript. So I'm just going to revise the last sessions. So yeah, if we have any kind of numeric values, we need to assign a function like this for numeric values. Sort method by default does string based comparison. That is why we need to write a custom function for comparing the two values at a time, and we need to return the difference between those two values. By this, the array would be sorted. Now we can go for log value, which is let's say sorted nums1. Let's just check if this works. Run the code again on the sample test case. Okay. nums1.sort. Let's run the code again. And as you can see, this output is same as what our expected answer should be. So we are sorted using the sort function. Yeah, our solution works properly. Now I'm going to remove this console.log statement and run the code to make sure that our test case is working fine. As you can see, the answer which we have and the expected answer is right. So for single test case, this code works. Now let's just try to see if this works for all the test cases mentioned by running submit button. And okay, we have our first issue, which is in case of input, let's say we have a 0 element. In this case, our m value is 0, and we are getting undefined in the output. Let's try to understand why step by step. So we have an array in which there are no elements in case of m1. So nums1 has no what we can say decisive or length of a particular interest. In case of num2, we have a single element 1 which is supposed to be added into this nums1. Let's try to understand the code step by step and let's see what happens in this case. So in case of start index, we have nums1.length, which is in case of this 1, and 1 minus n, which is again 1. So start index is 0. Yeah, that should work. And in case of this, we have start index set to 0, and it should run till nums1.length. Okay, now we have understood first issue. It is since this nums1.length is 1, but yeah, I think it should work for a single iteration. Let's just assume that. So for at least one iteration, it will work. then nums1 of I would be nums1 of 0 in this case, and nums2 of I minus n would be I would be 0 and minus n. Okay, nums2 of minus 1 was tried to be solved, that is why the issue occurred. So what we can do is we can go for maths dot abs. Abs is absolute function for taking absolute values, which by which the negative value issue will get solved. So in this case, I am using maths.abs in JavaScript. So in case of negative value, this returns a positive value. That's it. It converts negative values to positive values. And let's try to submit our code and check if this works. Okay, it did not work out. So let's just log the statements and check if this is going into the for loop. So we have our start index, which we can print. Then we can print the I value as well. And use to of whatever we are trying to do. So let's just check if that works as well. Nums2 element and print out that value as well and hit submit and check if this is giving a right output or what output we are getting. Okay, so in this case we have start index as 0, we have I as 0, and nums2 of maths dot absolute value is undefined. So this is where the issue is occurring. Nums2 is returning an undefined value. So what we can do is we can check what is this maths dot apps value next. Console dot log nums2 index comma I comma n, and let's just print out n as well so that we are like completely sure what is happening. So let's just print out n value here and again check. So we have n value as 1. Okay, nums2 index value is 1 as well, and nums2 element. Okay, the reason why this happened because nums2 has the value 1 at 0th index, and I am trying to index access the value which is present at 1, which is not working. Cool. So I think we need to reduce the indexes by 1. So in that case, what we can do is, if I go for start index minus 1, then that is going to create an issue. We cannot go with that approach, but we do need a value of 0 here. By when this value is 0, the n value should be 0 or something like that. So my start index should at least start from a next index value. So if I go for start index plus 1, and this will be equal to, like, I'm just shifting the indexes. In that case, this should go to I minus 1. And I think now we need to run the code again and check if this logic is correct. I'm not totally sure. No, it doesn't work. So we have 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. We have skipped a value. So this won't work as well. What can we do? So let's just keep this to I, and this as okay. In this case, my start index value was 0. What I can do is I can subtract this start index instead of my n value, and now let's just check if this logic works. Let me just run the code and I will explain the code again. So yeah, in this case, my at least the usual case is working. So what I have done is, instead of taking the n value, so n value was creating a problem in the this kind of test case because n value was initialized to 1, and since 0 minus 1 is 1 using absolute position, so we cannot go for the n index. But what we can do is we can go for the start index in our array. In this case, my start index is 0, right? So if I take the start index value and then subtract it from my I value, even in that case, it will work. So how this will work is, let's say my start index came to 3, then the I value is, let's say 3 in this case, then uh, I minus 3 would be, or the 3 minus 3 value would be 0. Then when I value is 4, again 1 and 2 value would be allowed. Only difference is, in this case, my start index starts from a value 0 when the m value does not contain any element. So if we are trying to have a scenario where there are no elements in this case, and if there are some elements, then my start index will be 0 in this case, and my I value will start replacing the values directly in this case. So if the I value is, let's say 0, and my start index is 0 as well in this case, so then 0 minus 0 would allow me to replace this 2 value to directly to 1. In this case, if I take the n value, then my value will turn out to be negative and that index will not be present. So better approach would be to use the start index instead of the n value to replace our values. To handle the case where the nums1 array is empty or there are no elements initially in nums1, like any kind of use case like that. So I think this code should work for our other test cases as well. So let's just hit submit and check if this is working for the other test cases. Yeah, the solution got accepted and all the test cases work. So we can comment out these log statements, and this is the final code which we can use for our cases. Now all this is trial and error. So when I started out with this problem initially, even then I took around 10 to 15 minutes to come up with the right solution. So don't think that, okay, if I am doing this in first or second try, it was so damn fast. No, even I took a lot of time to figure out such problems. So if you are watching this video and thinking that, oh no, this guy is doing this uh, or solving these problems using 1 or 2 tries, no, I also take a lot of tries to come up with the logic and then I come and make these videos. So I hope with that you are able to understand how the solution for this problem was devised, and this will be our final solution for this problem. And that's it for this problem. So if you want to check out other videos on my channel, you can check out the Monstack interview series, in which I have covered all the questions for front end and back end. Also, I am planning to create another app using React.js, which is a story speed app, in which I am going to create an app like this using Instagram, like similar to Instagram stories, but using React.js. This will be a website-based app, so that will be covered in my upcoming video. So if you like this video, hit the like button. If you subscribe to my channel, so that you will get notified about such useful videos in the future as well. And I'm going to continue with Leetcode practice, so there will be videos for Leetcode as well. That's it from my end. Goodbye and have a nice day, everyone.